Hello, Style to Speak listeners. I'm so thrilled to have McKenna on today. So this has been in the making for several weeks because we just had to get our schedules aligned, but this is going to be so highly valuable to you, speaker friends, because she does so much with your visual presentation, especially as it pertains to like your website and your brand and all those things that I am working on with you in the styling realm. She's doing in the digital realm. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to introduce McKenna Delaney. Did I say that right, McKenna?
Yep, you got it.
Awesome. She is the creative whirlwind behind brand and website design that's as unique as your fingerprint. Nestled in the heart of Nashville, she's not just a designer, she's a small business superhero. With a heart set on boosting your online swagger, McKenna infuses your brand with her magic touch, crafting websites that aren't just beautiful, but that tell your story with pizzazz. Remember those days when planners were all the rage? Designing stickers was just the prologue to her now thriving design saga. She's the friend you need on this wild ride of entrepreneurship, ready to sprinkle some of her design sparkle on your business dream. McKenna, welcome, and thank you for being on Style to Speak.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
The first thing I want to know is tell me a little bit about your business. I want to introduce my listeners to what you do and how, for the women who are speaking on stages, how you can actually really help them to increase their online presence in a way that's authentic to their message and their brand.
What a fabulous question. I love it. There are so many ways that we can kind of increase your online presence when you're a speaker. So, one of the things that I learned really early on in business is doing speaking engagements can really bring you clients. It's one of the quickest ways to get clients. You're sitting in front of a room, usually full of ideal clients. Hopefully, you're spending your time in front of ideal clients, which means that you'll be able to speak right to their problems, right? And that's really something that we cover in branding. A lot of times people think, oh, I just need a logo when I start my business. I just need a website. But really, what I like to do and how I kind of differentiate myself is I really like to deliver strategy. Like oftentimes in my discovery calls and then in our kickoff calls, I will tell clients that I consider myself the ideal client uh, advocate because really, if we're designing a brand that feels like us, yes, there's an important element to that I'll get to, but it's really more so about how the ideal client feels, right? My favorite analogy is always an extreme one, but um, we want to make sure that our look represents who we're speaking to. An example, I used to work in skincare and beauty in the beauty industry. So I always say, if like, let's say you're of an older generation, let's use boomers for example. If you're starting a skincare line for somebody who's 16 to help them with acne, it better look like it's for a 16-year-old, right? So it's important to make sure we like appeal to those demographics. So that's really what brand strategy means. I kind of went in depth on that a little bit because I often feel like brand strategy is one of those buzzwords that means nothing and yet everything at the same time. And I feel like that kind of ties in well with like how you style people, but your brand is how you make someone feel. And again, like it's not just the visual identity. It's the all-encompassing act. So one of the ways to get back to your original question is to build a brand, like I said, that appeals to the ideal client, but also represents you in terms of fashion. So, like I have a really great example. One of my clients, Danielle Lee Darling, love her. Um,
I
we
love that
chose
name.
her, right? I know it's so good. And it's her real name, which is
That's awesome.
extra awesome. But we chose her color palette based on what looks good on her, and she gets compliments on it at almost every networking event that we go to together, which is, I mean, she gets it regularly anyway, but I always notice that because she embodies her brand. She is her brand, which just like drives so much more power behind what she's offering.
I really love that. And that's kind of what we were talking about off camera when we spoke before is when you know what actually looks good on you, what color palettes, and even what types of, patterns, prints, design lines, things like that, you can actually incorporate those things into your brand. But what I love that you do is you're saying, okay, we're going to take all those things that you have worked with a stylist and figured out, and you've narrowed all that down. And then we're going to go, okay, of all these things, we're going to actually put them in a concise, strategic brand that represents you and your ideal client.
Yes, definitely. I'll give you another fun example I think that you'll love. I have a client, her name's Jen, and she owns Music City Pilates, which I live in Nashville, so we're Music City. And she actually handed over her color swatch book from when she got her colors done. Um, and we built her whole brand around that. And she's, eventually she'll be owning like a larger Pilates studio, but right now it's just her. And so having those colors like be colors that embody her at an event, at a networking event, is just so valuable and so important as a solopreneur. She's not really doing speaking engagements, but still networking events, you still want to show up as who you are. You want the congruence between your in-person vibe and experience as you do as your in your online vibe and experience.
Right. So tell my listeners a little bit about how having a stylist or even just working with a stylist ahead of time to narrow all those things down, how it actually helps you to do your job more efficiently. And can you tell us a couple of little details about, it doesn't have to be the full thing, obviously, but how would you actually take those things and create a strategy? You can come up with like a, imaginary client who that might be.
Yeah, totally. So, um, I would say one of the things that would be super helpful for me ahead of time. So in my questionnaire, I have a whole section that's about you and your style. Like most of it's about, again, your ideal clients. Like I always feel like I'm like harping on that too long, but um there's a whole section that's about your style, and you'll appreciate this as a fellow fashion lover. One of the questions is like, what are your favorite brands? And it's entertaining to me how often I get, I don't care what brand it is. But
Mm,
a lot of times, like in our onboarding call, I can usually pull a few brands out of them. Like they always want to act like, oh, I'm not Studi, I don't care about brands. And I have to say, like, I'm not asking you to like tell me Louis Vuitton or Gucci, but like if it's Universal Thread at Target, like that tells me something.
mhm.
Like the brands that you like and the brands that you shop, enjoy, show me what you enjoy, what you're attracted to, and it helps me do my job better. And so that's kind of one facet of it, that would help a lot for me if somebody works with a stylist beforehand, because they're going to know exactly where they shop. They're going to know if they're more of a Free People person or more of an Urban Outfitters person. They're going to know if they like Eileen Fisher or if they like Madewell, like
Right.
knowing those things ahead of time and what your general aesthetic is massively helpful to me, especially for that section. And then you're also able to take them like as a stylist through a physical brand transformation in terms of them understanding what those looks are, what those words are. They'll have seen a mood board, I'm sure, with like what kind of colors, all that really helps. But also the color aspect of it, just like I mentioned with Music City Pilates, that helps a lot. But even knowing what they look good in is super impactful for me. Like I do know a good majority of my clients in person, but like over Zoom, it's harder for me to, make an assumption about what you're wearing. I'm not going to the mall with you to build your brand, right? So I think working with a stylist in that capacity would be so helpful in just bringing about the best version of your brand.
So I think somewhere that you and I coincide as far as the goal to creating a visual aesthetic that is brand aligned for your clients is you want to help them to be more memorable and to stand out in the marketplace. And of course, and specifically for the audience who's listening now, is to stand out as speakers when they're on stage and off stage. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what you've seen in your business, because of course we can definitely parallel that. What you've seen in your business when you create these brand aligned um, aesthetics for them in their online presence, be it their website or whatever else you do with them. Maybe you work with logos. How has that actually increased their memorability and brought in more clients? And for my audience, it would be create more speaking engagements to then have more clients.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, consistency, consistency and like recognition or like recognizability, we're going to make up our own word there,
Nice.
is really what it comes down to. So when we have a color palette that we're pulling from, like, I'm wearing this pink sweater, that's one of my brand colors. I have this particular background. That's not my brand. I put this wallpaper up before then, but because it's memorable on Zooms, right? So I think that having that like consistency in your look, in your physical person is so great. Like if I hand out a business card today, it matches the look that I'm wearing, right? And not to say that I'm perfect at it every time. We all have our, I don't know if you're familiar with the store Sundance, but I really love their aesthetic too, which doesn't match my brand at all. So sometimes I find myself in that particular like dichotomy of like who am I today? But I think the consistency there is what's going to help you stand out a lot more. um, Also, just being styled, I think, is something that is not taken as seriously as it should be. For example, I go to a lot of women's conferences locally here. I'm, like I said, in Nashville, and we get a lot of that. And oftentimes, like, people don't iron their clothes or they just don't look well put together. And honestly, that's even more memorable in a negative light than looking all the way, complete. Like if you're matching up there with your slides and everything is one cohesive look, you look like a pretty present, right? Like you look pulled together, you look poised. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to in terms of like where we coincide on that is just pulling all of those bits and pieces to make your full brand. I think there's just such a misunderstanding and a misconception as to what an actual brand is because it's again so widely used um that and some people think brand is as simple as colors and fonts, and it sure can be, but again it's more of the feeling that you give someone that might be a prospective client or otherwise. And style is so much of that, like wearing makeup. I think there's a huge connotation in our world as well that if you wear makeup you're trying too hard, if you don't wear makeup you're not trying hard enough, or there's so much like opinion on it. As an ex makeup artist, that was something that I faced a lot of. And it's just kind of showing that you care.
And when you're
It's
on stage, you really don't have the option to not wear makeup.
yeah,
I don't
100%.
I don't wanna be like, "Oh, you have to because I said so." I just mean the lights, like, the lighting will make your face look like you don't have any features. It will just completely wash you out, and so you don't really have that option. So you need to know, "Okay, when I wear makeup, you can make it look as natural as possible." Like, you don't have to love a glittery eye like I do and a red lip, but like you said, that's really important. Let's
Yes.
kind of touch on the emotional aspect, kind of what is probably going on in the hearts of women who are a little more resistant to all things visual branding. I do feel like I feel like there are some things holding them back inside when it comes to dressing really well and presenting themselves well. And because here's the reality, you have to draw attention to yourself when you are in business and when you are in ministry. Now, I talk a lot about the reason why we draw attention to ourselves is not to glorify ourselves, but it's actually to glorify who God created us to be and to just ultimately to glorify Jesus, to share the gospel, to, bring more people into the kingdom. So tell me a little bit about why that's important. And maybe have you ever gone through a transformation like that where like you used to be one way where you were more self-conscious about really standing out and dressing well and having makeup on and having this beautiful, I mean, your brand is beautiful.
Thank
Like,
you.
where did that transition happen for you?
Yeah, what a question. I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna lean into that kind of the back half of that question is like, what's my transformation look like?
Mhm.
So, um, it's kind of a crazy story considering who I am now. Like, if any of my friends listen to this, they know the story, but I don't think they like have a full grasp on it. But I was super shy in school, so I was very, very academic. I loved reading all the books and winning all the tests and having all the high grades. And eventually I ended up in private school when I realized in sixth grade I had no friends in school. And that was a really tough time for me, but I was a heavily introverted human being. Just that was like my complete identity. You could find me in a corner reading a book, or I was most comfortable talking to teachers. I'm also an only child, so no shock there. We're very adult oriented, but I was just very shy. So I ended up in private school. I really struggled to make friends there as well, even though I enjoyed the academics more. Struggled to make friends because I lived so far away. And throughout high school, again, still was facing that same thing of not having a lot of friendships. And I just, in high school, I think we all remember this feeling of you have to figure out what you're going to do with your life. What are you good at? And it's like, well, reading books and knowing things doesn't get you much. I mean, it's am I going to go be a scientist? Probably not. And I always knew that I was kind of alternative in terms of how I liked my life to operate. Like my school, we only went to school 2 days a week. I knew that I was not going to be in a 40-hour a week desk job, and so I had to I had to face that. Um, in high school, and so my I don't remember if it was my junior or senior year, but I realized that if I could learn to sell, I would have success. Like salespeople are always successful. This was, I started high school in 2008, so all around that recession period, and I realized in that time that salespeople could make money, and so I turned to books, shockingly. And I read things like How to Win Friends and Influence People, To Sell is Human. There's all kinds of different books that I read to kind of figure out like who I wanted to become in this next era of my life. Because shy and meek and in a corner and unwilling and unable to talk to people was not going to get me very far in life. Like I had that full realization. And so I went to college. I actually went again because I was so shy. Went to a tiny little college. I think I graduated with like 19 or 20 students.
That is small.
Very small. We had like maybe 5 classrooms, because that was my comfort zone, right? So college didn't stretch my comfort zone at all. But I loved every minute of it, so I'm not upset about that. But once I graduated school, again, I just realized like I've got to make a change. I was in cosmetic sales, so I gotten a lot more comfortable just talking to a wall if I needed to. I was pretty good at those sales because I was so passionate about makeup.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the transformation for me really came, it wasn't necessarily like a visual transformation, although I've probably had that as well. But I've always been into hair and makeup and clothes and stuff. But it really came in like the last 4 or 5 years. Like I started attending networking events and really getting into my community. And I remember my first few networking events, and I'm sure there are a lot of your listeners out here that can relate to this, but I would be so nervous. I would be looking at my phone. I hated every minute. I would think of every excuse to not go, but I had prepaid for every event for the year, like, it was like a membership,
That's a way to
and
force yourself to do it.
yep, and so I was like, "Well, technically, if I skip this one, it cost me $24 or something," you know? So I was like, "I'm not gonna miss it," but I would sit there, like, almost angrily. Well, 1, you give off that energy, right? But 2, like, who's gonna reach out to you if you look closed off? And I just started to have that understanding of, like, if I'm gonna start a business and I'm gonna do this thing, like, I have to be likable, I have to be enjoyable. And so I just started to just, like, learn from the other ladies that I was meeting. A lot of them were older, as I kind of stated earlier, I do well with people that are older than me. And they all kind of took me under their wing, and I've definitely seen a transformation in myself. Like I have no problem talking to literally anyone at any point about anything. It's just a level of confidence that I did not have before. I was still a confident person in a different way. I was very confident in my smarts, confident in my brain, but I wasn't necessarily a confident person. And so yeah, like when you get to that point where you feel pulled together in all the different ways, it
Yeah.
is magically life changing. And part of that is just your energy that you walk into a room with. Like people start to notice. And for speakers, that is so important. If
Right.
you are forgettable, you're forgettable, right?
Right. Well, I just love how you talked about how you started off just very introverted. You started off just maybe not confident in your people skills, really, is kind of what it sounded like. Just being
Mhm.
able to connect and relate to people. And so much of what speakers do is they have to connect with an audience, right? So, how much better, how much more skilled can you be at doing that when you do practice and you do the networking, which is really
Yeah.
important. And I know you have a group specifically
Mhm.
about to help people with those skills, right?
Yeah, I have a networking group. It's called Wildflowers Networking, and I actually think it's like really suited well for introverts, because so it's technically the group that I joined that I was talking about that I paid to join, but we ended up kind of closing that piece of it down and I took it over, renamed it, and we've kind of kept a similar model. But yeah, I love it personally because you're not fighting for time, right? So like for anybody who's listening, you know when you go to a networking event, you are fighting for your time to stand up and say whatever you want to say in whatever way you want to say it. And with my group, you get up, you have your 60-second elevator pitch or whatever. I love for people to give that elevator pitch because the more times you say it, the more confident you get
Yep.
in it and the more concise it becomes, right?
Mhm.
And that is so valuable for your brand. But then we have an opportunity to talk about like your new products and services that are coming up, any announcements or events that you're having. And everybody can have that extra bit of time for whoever wants to say it. Like for myself, I don't talk about events a lot because I'm a website designer,
Yeah.
not an event holder. But like the lady, like there's a lady in our group, Jan, who I love dearly. She does Mary Kay, so every Saturday she has a muffins and makeovers party at her house. So she gets to talk about that. But I love that it's really suited for that, so nobody feels like they got left behind or didn't get recognized, and it really offers everyone the opportunity to know who else is in the room that they might wanna connect with. So, definitely.
Speaking of connection, I was just thinking to myself, I'm going, we were built for connection. That's
Mhm.
the whole reason why the Lord gives us the gifts that he does. That's the whole reason why we're going on stage is to connect with our audience, but not just connect with them to create like a temporary experience. Like we genuinely want to work with people and cultivate those relationships. And I love how you took the bull by the horns and you said, I'm going to learn how to connect with people. Can you tell me, like, this will be the last question because I think this is a great place to end.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how building the skill set to really deeply connect with other women and people that you do business with, how that's actually impacted your life from, I don't want to just say emotional standpoint, but I would say like in that direction from an emotional standpoint, and how has it changed maybe your view of the world?
That is a fantastic question, like, hats off to you. Um, I mean, in every possible way, right? Like, the story I just shared is I had no friends. Yeah, and I worked in cosmetics for so many years and I do consider those people that I hung out with then friends, but they're definitely not friends to the level that I have friends now.
Mm,
And for example, like COVID hit, I lost my job. Most of us in that I was most people in my friend group lost their jobs and I never spoke to most of them again. Like we literally left work one day and I've never seen or heard from them again. And that's two-sided, me as well,
yeah.
but it came to a point, where we didn't necessarily have anything to talk about if it wasn't work related, right? We didn't necessarily have any commonalities, whereas the friendships that I've cultivated now matter more to me than any business success, right?
Mhm.
Like this year alone, I think I've done like 5 of my best friends' brands and websites, and like, I just feel like I have, like, this tiara of all of these jewels I've gotten to create this year, and it's, like, the coolest feeling in the world to be able to work with your friends. So often people say, "Don't work with your friends." I'm like, that is how I made all of my best friends."
Yeah.
But it totally comes down to the friendships that I have, like, they matter the most to me, and if I had never taken that leap to, like, retrain my brain and be comfortable with other people and jump into conversations I maybe didn't feel comfortable jumping into in the past, I wouldn't have made those friendships. And if I wasn't the one who took the bull by the horns in some of the situations to just be the outgoing person, even when that was not my nature,
Yeah.
I might not have some of those friendships. Like, one good one, as an example, is somebody I've known for a couple of years, but up until this January, she and I like really hadn't become friends. Like we were like, friends, but not as close as we are now. And we were at a retreat in January, and she looked at me and she's like, "Well, I was always intimidated by you," and I was like, "Me, I was always intimidated by you," and I was like, "I'm a goober, don't be intimidated by me," and she's like, "I am too," and from then on, it was like, "Let's be best buds," right? So it's like really creating those connections with people just over little things, and also having life experiences together, like where you and I met, like traveling, having life experiences are something that bond you on such a deep level. So Yeah, that's really how my life has been transformed. I mean, I went from here's a really good example that I think is funny. I talk to my grandma pretty frequently, and she will always answer the phone and be like, "Hi, social butterfly," because it was just such the antithesis of who I used to be. And she'll be like, "You're doing so many things. I always see you at different things. Like you're always on Facebook or on Instagram." And I think that's kind of so cool because it's like a reminder of like who I used to be, and I just don't identify as that person anymore. And it's just kind of wild to like think about all the opportunities I missed out on then as well. Like a message I'd love to leave to any introverts listening is like the college I went to, obviously the professors there were teaching because they cared about our success. And I was too shy to take advantage of any of that. I have no relationships with any of my professors because I just wanted to take the littlest amount I could from them because I'm not a taker.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like people love to give. I want somebody to come pick my brain and ask me questions. I would love that. I do love that. I go to a women's co-working space every day almost. So that I can share my knowledge with people. And like that's what they were doing. They were practically donating their time to us. And I didn't tap into that. So like people want to give, people want to have connection. Take advantage is the wrong wording, but take
Yeah.
advantage of that in people,
Yeah.
like enjoy that out of the human experience.
Exactly. Just really cultivate those relationships and those connections because you just never know who's going to be your best friend. And I keep hearing too,
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, sales and doing what you're called to do, stepping into your God given calling is actually one of the ways that we can create really actually deep blessings in our lives because of the people that we impact and who impact us.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's really awesome.
absolutely.
Well, tell everybody where they can connect with you, all your social media, anything else that you want to share to my audience that you think would be helpful.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, come find me on Instagram at McKenna_Delaney, MAKENA, because it's hard to spell. And then my website is just McKennaDelaney.com. If you want to chat, reach out. I would love to connect with anybody that's curious about branding or anything or networking, even. Happy to give you some tips and tricks there as well.
That's awesome. Can I just bless your business? Can I pray over you?
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Heavenly Father, I just bless McKenna's business and I just bless all the connections that she has made and that she will make. I just thank you so much for her kind heart, for her willingness to put herself out there, for her sharing her story about how connection really is way better than pulling back and just watching and not stepping into our God-given calling. So thank you, Lord, for McKenna. I just ask that you would continue to bless everything she does. I pray that you would continue to bring her all the right clients and just ask that you would help all the women listening to really be deeply impacted by what she shared. Everybody that you're bringing to this podcast, whoever it is, that they would actually feel free to step out a little bit more confident with a little bit more. Take some of those guards down so that they can truly connect with the people that you have put into their lives because you have called us for connection. I thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.